Well, and think about it. Take a look at India, where there's a real problem. India is a wonderful subcontinent. It's coming up in the world, but their water infrastructure sucks.
Yeah.
They just basically don't have it. They got people in the sewers who are dying from the sewer gases. They're literally shoveling this stuff. So, what do? Well, they're not going to. Who's going to come up with $500 billion or whatever? That's a huge, huge country.
Yeah.
Well, why not just have decentralized from day one, where it's self-reliant pods, both in industry, in farms, in housing developments, eventually individual homes. It makes a whole lot more sense. And then you have a small municipality to supply the fresh water. Treated water gets recycled, and then they can dump it into the ground, into the aquifer to recharge it, and everybody's happy. So it's a model that we need to learn from. Let's take a look back home here at Miami-Dade County. It was built without any urban planning back in the day. And so there's about over 100,000 septic tanks in the county. And they fail, they leak, they're literally, because the water level is rising, or maybe the ground's subsiding, I don't know which, but whatever. It's literally these septic systems are coming in contact with the aquifer, and it's a real problem. It's a real, it's a sanitary issue. So the county is going, okay, let's spend billions and connect sewage to every single one of these things. Well, number one, it's supposed to be 6 billion. It'll be 10, 12 by the time they're done. Secondly, it'll tear up streets for 20 years. Why not just give a rebate to those septic owners to put in one of those self-reliant systems that are mature by now, and the poop goes into a sludge tank that gets emptied out once a year by a truck, and that's it. It's done. But here's the problem. The county, Miami-Dade County, is not thinking that way. They like sewage. They like pipes. They like to raise a lot of money and have the big plant. But that doesn't solve the problem.
Right.
So here's our approach. We're not talking to Miami-Dade County. We don't talk to late adopters. I learned that in high tech. You talk to the early adopters. You talk to the people who really, really need it. They're being fined, or as we see in North Texas, that they're building a housing development that's 20 miles from the local sewage plant, so that's impossible. So they need a self-contained thing. So they know they need it. You don't have to market it to them. They know, I got to have this thing.
Right.
It's a flying J in the middle of the country on a freeway. Yeah. No connection to anything. It needs its own sewage connection. RV campgrounds, mobile home parks, all that stuff. So the first generation for us is the users that are forced to be self-reliant. And we don't go to, there's a wonderful, wonderful book called Inside the Tornado. And it describes the high-tech life cycle, right? The high-tech life cycle always starts with, I call it the nose of the armadillo, because right there at the beginning is the super early adopters, the people who actually used the Newton PDA back in the day.
Right.
Those people, right? They just do it because it's new. And that gets you in there. But you start progressing along the snout of the armadillo, now you get to what's called the strategic buyers, who are buying something for a good, valid, competitive reason, or they're legally being fined or whatever. After that, there's something called the chasm, which is something you have to leap over to get wide adoption. And that is how do you get there? Well, at the bottom of this, as it starts rising up, the very bottom of it, something called, this guy calls it the bowling alley, where you create a bunch of applications and a bunch of users, and after a while you get critical mass, and boom, it takes off. All of a sudden you have a tornado of adoption, right? Now, that's very common in high tech. It happened with, back in the 80s when I had a computer company in New York City, we saw two competitors show up for big enterprise databases. One was called Ingress, and one was called Oracle. And Oracle did not work. Ingress worked great. Well, guess who survived? Oracle. Why? Because Larry Ellison was smart enough to go for the adoption.
Interesting.
And the users are like, well, it doesn't work too well, but everybody's buying it, so it'll get worked out. It'll get figured out. Whereas Ingress is like, we will not ship anything if it does not work, and they're not German. I'm not. That was not a German thing. I was just saying that they had this conservative attitude, right? And as a result, you've got to go for the velocity. When there's a tornado of adoption, then it's a matter of how many seats can you get, how fast.
Yeah.
It's market share. It's no longer about proving the technology, but it's about who has the momentum. And then at the top of that curve, the back end of it is the conservative guys and the skeptics. And you don't market to them. Why? Because they'll follow.
Yeah.
They'll follow the trend, right? So people say to me, "Oh, why don't you go get a grant from Tallahassee?" I'm like, "Nope, not going there. I'm not doing it." Because they'll put me through the ringer and they'll give the deal to their golfing buddy anyway. So no thanks. We deal with users that are desperate. And I think that's the key, in entrepreneurship is find the where's the real demand, and don't rest until you have it. It's too easy to just go, okay, this is good. I'm making, environmental test kits, but nobody's buying environmental test kits, but I'm making environmental test kits,
Right.
You got to find the traction. And that's, I think, the key.